so these are the test corrections for Chapter 6 tests taken on May 10th, 2019. This is for versions A, B, and H for the name of my kids, Autumn, Brooklyn, and Hadley. Question number 1. Find the remainder. You have this polynomial, and at the end it tells you f of negative 2. So if you write the letters f of x over it, you'll recognize that your x value is negative 2. What can you do with this negative x equals negative 2? You can do a couple of things. You can use the remainder theorem. I thought that was the easiest. You basically take x equals negative 2 and you replace every x value with what? Negative 2. I'll go over that in a second. Another way that you could have done the same problem is use x equals negative 2 and then use synthetic division. And if you have that negative 2, and then you would use these values 1, 8, 2, 0, and 4, and then you would do synthetic division, and whatever you have left over there, your remainder. Does that make sense? Another third way that you could have used or done this problem I would not recommend is using long division. What could you have done? If you added 2 to both sides, then your long division would have been x plus 2, and then you have all of this. And then whatever is your remainder at the very end would be your answer. Does that make sense? So 3 ways to do the problem, but I think the easiest is to use a remainder theorem. So if I put in negative 2 there, and don't forget to write down PEMDAS. Because as you're simplifying, you want to go about doing it the correct order. So negative 2 to the 5th power, I'm doing exponents first. That means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 gives you negative 32. Here again, you're not going to multiply. You're going to do exponents first. So negative 2 to the 4th power gives me 4, you get 8? No, I can't think right now. 16. 16 times 8 gives you 128. And then negative 2 to the 3rd power gives you negative 8, and negative 8 times 2 gives you negative 16 plus the 4. And if you add up those values, then you get 84 is your answer. C is the correct answer for number 1. Question number 2. It's going too fast? Watch the video again. Multiple choice. Factor completely. Okay. When it tells you to factor completely, the first thing you should always think about is your greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor there? The answer is no. There's no numbers in the coefficients that they have in common. The second thing you want to know is if you're going to use the X-box method, right? The X-box method works for either 2 or 3 terms. Well, what's half of 3? 1.5. So you don't have something like y to the 1.5 power, so I cannot use the X box method to factor. I don't have 4 terms, so you're not factoring by grouping. The last one you have is something to the power 3. What 3-dimensional shape has the power 3? It is a cube. So here we have the difference of cubes. How do you know it's the difference of cubes problem? Well, if you put these parentheses, let's see if I can put a nice bold color. If you can put a number in these parentheses to the power 3, that would be y to the 3rd power. So basically taking the cube root of y to the 3rd. And the cube root, or 3 identical numbers that multiply to be 64, is 4. Now, pay attention here. Your b value is not negative 4. It's a positive 4. You're going to write out your formula for the difference of cubes. AB, a squared, AB, b squared. And then every day you wash with soap. Same. Opposite. Always positive. You should always be an always positive person, like Julia. And then you're going to substitute in your values. So your A value is going to be y, and your B value is going to be 4. So there's my A value. There's my B value. Now my A value I'm putting in parentheses or brackets. A value is y, B value is 4, and then you're doing a substitution, so again, put that in parentheses, so you have 4 squared. So if you clean it up, same, y squared is y squared, this becomes 4y, and 4 squared becomes 16. And then this matches choice. A is your answer. Again, if you're doing your quiz corrections, I'd recommend writing a sentence while you did the problem. Maybe it's like, I didn't know the formula, I totally forgot B should have been positive 4, not negative 4, something like that, so that you remember not to do the same problem on your final tomorrow. Question number 3. Determine the quotient. Okay, let's think about this. It's a multiple choice. Do I grade your work? Yes or no? On multiple choice, I don't look at your work. I just look at the answer. So just like your final, you don't have to show me your work. So even if I said the words like, use long division, am I going to look at your work? No. So you could use something like synthetic division. Does that make sense? You think about those hints? So I just want to quickly show you what would it look like if you wanted to use synthetic division on this problem. You would have to set it equal to 0, add 1 to both sides, divided by 3, you get x equals 1/3. And then this 1/3, you have to now use a fraction with your coefficients. Does that make sense? 6, 1, 8, 9, and negative 4. And you can go about doing the problem like that. Or you can just do it traditional way like I'm doing here. My divisor, in my dividend there, I'm going to make sure that there are no placeholders I need. So I have 6 to the x to the 4th. I have a number, 1, right? 1x to the 3rd, 8x squared, 9x, and negative 4. All there. Super happy. Then I have to ask the question, how many times is 3x going into the first term? 6x to the 4th. So what I did here is, I did a little side problem, which you can do, might be helpful. 6x to the 4th divided by 3x. Another way of thinking about it is that 6 is 2 times 3, and x to the 4th has 4 x's. And then 3x is 3 times x, and then you can go about canceling the 3 and the x, and then what you have left over is 2x to the 3rd, and that's why I wrote 2x to the 3rd here. Remember, another useful hint when you're using long division is if when you multiply 2x to the 3rd times 3x, gives you 6x to the 4th. These numbers will always be the same. The reason why is when you subtract it, it equals 0. 2x to the 3rd times negative 1 gives me negative 2x to the 3rd. Feel free to use your calculator at this point. 1 minus negative 2, that's the opposite of a negative 2, which is positive, so 1 plus 2 is 3. 3x to the 3rd. Bring that one down. I got 8x squared. How many times is 3x going to 3x cubed? Your answer is x squared. Multiply, so I get 3x cubed, negative x squared. 3 minus 3 is 0. 8 minus negative 1 is really 8 plus 1, which is 9. 9x squared. Bring it down. 3x goes into 9x squared. 3x times 3x gives you x squared. Negative 3x. 9 minus negative 3 gives you 12. Bring it down. And then 3x goes into 12x 4 times, and then you multiply, and you have a remainder 0. So my quotient is the answer above, and that would be choice B. And if you had like extra time in your life and on the test, you could multiply this polynomial times the divisor to get the dividend. We've done that in class, right? Does that make sense? Way of checking your answer. Okay. Questions 4 and 5. Given x minus 5, write the 0 that corresponds to each factor. So where's the factor? The factor is the x minus 5. Remember, another key hint of factors, they usually have parentheses, but the parentheses really aren't as important. And you need to write the 0. So what you do is, that's your hint, 0. You set it equal to 0. And you add 5 to both sides, you get x equals 5. Now, on your previous quiz and study guides, 5 basically means where the graph goes through the x-axis at 5. So we said that you must have x equals 5. And again, we explicitly said that on our previous quizzes and tests and last year's quizzes and tests as well. If you wrote the word 5, you did not get, you got a 0. Question number 5. Given, should say given, x equals negative 2, write the factor. So factors, again, might have these parentheses as a hint. that corresponds to each 0. So they're saying this is a 0. How do I make it a factor? You should set it equal to 0. If I add 2 to both sides, you'll get x plus 2 equals 0. Now, how did you get your 2 points? You can have x plus 2. You can have the parentheses x plus 2. Or if you even wrote x plus 2 equals 0, either of those would give you the 2 points. Question number 6. Is x minus 5 a factor of f of x equals all that? So one way of doing the problem is you could have done synthetic division, right? You could do long division, make sure the remainder is 0, synthetic division, remainder is 0. Or if you just set it equal to 0, you get x equals 5. And if you put 5 into each of these, I'm using the remainder theorem, and you simplify, you realize that my remainder is 240. Because my remainder is not 0, then it's not a factor. So the answer is B, not a factor. That side was out of 14 points. Turn to the back side. Okay. Number 7 says to expand 2x plus 5 to the 4th power. I wrote it as a plus b to the 4th power. If it's the 4th power, I'm going to look at my Pascal's triangle. Remember, you're not looking at the 4th row. You're actually looking at the 5th row. And the reason why is that because on here you should have the column. So you got 2 points if you just wrote the coefficients 1, 4, 6, 4, and 1. 1, 4, 6, 4, and 1. And then you start with a on the left side to the 4th power, and you just go descending order. 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. B's are on the right, so you start with b to the 4th, b to the 4th, and you just count down. B to the 3rd, b to the 2nd, b to the 1st, b to the 0. And you don't have to write the 1, and b to the 0 power is equal to 1, so you just have a to the 4th, 4a to the 3rd b, 6a squared b squared plus 4ab cubed plus b to the 4th. If you got to this part so far, I gave you 2 points. Okay, then you substitute in your a value. So your a value is 2x, but pay attention. When you substitute, your a value is 2x. The 4 is on the outside of the parentheses. That was a common mistake. See? Common mistakes. A lot of students wrote the 4 on the inside. Bad. So when you expand this, it's 2x times 2x times 2x times 2x, which gives you 16x to the 4th. With an a value of 2x and a b value of 5, 2x cubed is 8x cubed, and then 8 times 4 times 5 gives you 160. So the answer right there would be 160x cubed. 4x squared plus 25 times 6 gives you 600x squared. This would be 125 times 2x times 4 gives you 1000x, and 5 to the 4th power gives you 625. Very helpful that you have the Pascal's triangle and a calculator. Another common mistake you could, not wrong, if you wrote out 2x plus 4 times, and then you try to multiply them, you still should have gotten that answer. Question number 8. Factor completely. Remember, always ask the question when it says factor completely, do you have a greatest common factor? And the answer is? Yes, you do have a greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 6x to the 3rd. If you just got a common factor, like maybe you wrote like 2x cubed, I gave you 2 points. X squared minus 4x plus 3 can be factored again using your x method. Correct answer is 6x to the 3rd times x minus 3 times x minus 1. And again, the reason why you can use this x, because if you look here in purple, half of 2 is 1, and you have a trinomial there. So it does work. Question number 9. Factor completely. Well, if you count the number of terms, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to try to factor by grouping. Now, this one looks kind of funny that they don't have it in descending order, right? Normally this would be over here. But the reason why they did that is kind of show off to you that they do have a greatest common factor. So, one way of doing the problem is 2 GCFs, which is x squared minus 4, or if you did it, putting it into a z in your box, greatest common factor, x squared, x, negative 4, and negative 5. So you have x squared minus 4 and x minus 5. If you got this, I gave you 3 points because you can factor this one again. X squared minus 4 is x squared plus 0x minus 4. And then you'll get x plus 2, x minus 2. So you would need this one for full credit. And the last one. Alright, question number 10. Now, question number 10 was long, but guess what? It was only out of 4 points. So it wasn't like that was the whole test. And this was actually the same for both versions. So if you have both versions, then do it. Given x cubed minus 2x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0, find all the possible roots. When you see the word all possible roots, you should be thinking of 2 letters. They are?
P and Q.
P and Q. This is my P value. This is my Q value. So all the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Q value is 1. So all the possible values, again, you don't have to write what's in the yellow box. You can write plus minus 1. But you should have 8 terms. And that, if you have all 8 of those, or if you again wrote plus minus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 3, plus minus 6, then I would have given you 1 point. If you got like one of those in there correct, then I gave you 0.5, half of a point. A common mistake was to write the numbers 1, 2, 5, and 6 would have been wrong. Okay, what do you do with these numbers? Well, you pick one of the numbers to test. Now, in the end, there are 3 answers. So let's just say you picked 1. And then you write your coefficients, 1, negative 2, negative 5, and 6. And then I'm going to apply synthetic division. So bring it down, multiply these 2 numbers. I get 1, add down, multiply, add down, multiply, add down, you get 0. Okay. Now, what does it tell you when the remainder is 0? It tells you this is a factor. It works. What does it mean if it works? It gives you a hint of the other answers. So, if you chose, I'll show you the other options, but in this problem, if x equals 1, that means that the factor is x minus 1. And then these 3 that are left are, start with negative 6 as your constant, and then work your way up. Add an x, so that's negative 1x, and then x. Now, this is not factored completely, because that's what it tells us to do. If you put that into your x method or x box, then you'll get x minus 3, x plus 2. So any order of these, I would have given you 2 points. Let's just say you just wrote x minus 3, x plus 2. I would give you 1 point, just as explained here. A common mistake was students tested all 8 numbers, and then they used synthetic division, but they didn't know what to do after the synthetic division. You have to factor again. Now here's the great news about math. There are multiple ways of doing the problem. So you could have chosen this path. You could have chosen the green path, where maybe you started with 3. And then you did your synthetic division, and then you factored this, and you would still get the same answer. Does that make sense? Or you could have done this one in red. So you didn't need to do all of them. All you need to do is find one that works. So this is what you needed for factoring completely. Now, a common mistake was the next part. A lot of students would then write the factored form under solve. Remember, solve means you get x by itself. You can take that number and put it back into the equation, and you'll actually get 0. How do you solve? You take your factored form and you set it equal to 0. And you'll get 3 answers. X equals negative 2, 1, and 3. Now, for students who actually did the synthetic division like a billion times in the previous problem, and you wrote this down, that is correct, but a lot of you guys didn't go from synthetic division to actually writing out factors. Okay? I gave you 0.5 if you had one of these correct, if you wrote like x equals negative 2. And then, of course, the wonderful extra credit question. My kids' names are Brooklyn, Hezekiah, Hadley, Eloise, and Autumn. If you wrote the word Hope, I gave you 1 point because Autumn's middle name is Hope. Common mistakes were David Jr., Summer, Allison. Autumn is another word for fall, so I think they meant like Adam, like cell. And then creative students wrote Mr. Ing Junior, and you didn't get credit for that.
That's fine.
And then your test was out of 30 points.
SHS Math.net Junior.